Hi guys, back again with another fantastic book that I just finished. This time it's Full Rip 9.0, The Next Big Earthquake in the Pacific Northwest. This book is by Sandi Doughton and was published in 2013 and 2014 is the copyright date on it, published by Sasquatch Books. And it is 14 chapters of very interesting and scientific research into earthquakes in the Pacific Northwest, and particularly about the Cascadia subduction zone, and as well as the plate, the Juan Fuca plate, of course, subducting underneath the North American plate. So to give you a little bit better of an idea of what they're really referring to, I'm going to just set the book aside for a few seconds, and I'm going to show you what plate we're actually talking about. And thanks to the USGS site, they have a fairly decent site, and it's very explainable on there. So let's have a look. So this is the USGS site that I was referring to, and I'll leave a link down below in the description so you can actually go to the site yourselves and have a look. I've brought up the map to show the Juan Fuca plate here that I'm running my mouse around, and as you can see, this is the Queen Charlotte Islands on the west coast of British Columbia. And this is where it starts, and the subduction zone is all the way down to gets right into California. And this is what they're referring to within the book. And as you may notice, there's a couple of earthquakes here that happened recently in the past. There's one here which can be a blessing in disguise, if you will, or a little bit of pressure relief. But the other one's happening here, kind of along I-5 and that area in Portland and so on. These are more the inland ones, and they're not the ones that we're really talking about. You notice there's a lack of earthquakes along here in this whole area, and this is more or less what they're referring to within the book. It seems to be fairly locked up tight, and I'll explain that a little bit more in detail further down as we go through the book. But for right now, that's kind of the area. This is the Juan Fuca plate on the west coast, and of course Seattle, the state of Washington, state of Oregon, and down into California. The California split is down here from Los Angeles. That's your San Andreas fault, of course. But this one here, like I say, there's a real lack of earthquakes along here, and that's the major concern. So delving a little bit into the book, the 14 chapters, kind of go through them one by one as what I had read here. So chapter 1, of course, says quiet in Kansas, and they're kind of referring to the fact of what I just mentioned there about the plate being locked up, and it refers back to the last major quake that happened there in the Pacific Northwest, of course, was and when I talk major quakes, I'm talking really big ones in the 9.0 level or higher. And that last quake, through the research they've done, basically happened in the year 1700. And that's actually documented by using references from the tsunami it created over in Japan, or that created the tsunami on the Pacific Northwest side, but it traveled all the way over to Japan. Then we get on to chapter 2, Written in the Mud. It shows some very interesting research on how they actually found out when these major quakes happened. And we're talking again the full 9.0 type quakes, and it's quite interesting. Then goes on to describing a little bit more here. Chapter 3, Parent Quakes, Orphan Tsunami, and that's the one from the year 1700 that they've identified. Chapter 4, of course, A View from the Sea, and this is where they started their research into the sea floor and the actual subduction zone, taking a bunch of measurements, core samples, etc. Very interesting stuff. Then we move on to chapter 5, which are the more localized faults in Seattle itself. And of course it tells you that there's things, Seattle itself is basically laying on a what do we want to call it? Glacial till. Okay, in other words, it's been worn down, part of the mountains that have been worn down, and it does have a fault underneath, going right through pretty much the center of Seattle, which is a major concern. Chapter 6 is Seeing the Faults for the Trees. This is where they're using dendrochronology to identify the dates of when the trees actually died, or it gets close anyway within the year, and referring back to the 1700 tsunami after the earthquake, basically killing a bunch of trees and causing things to turn into mud flats and so on. So I won't ruin too much of that. I'll let you explore that on your own. Chapter 7, Earthquakes that wouldn't stay put. It's more localized, the ones that happen along these inland faults. And again, those are more created from the back end of the subduction, not the front end. And the front end is what's actually locked up right now. So that's the concern. Okay, moving on to chapter 8. This is where they refer to it as it came from the deep. And that's a little bit more chat about the front end of the actual subduction zone and how it will generate a major quake. It's quite interesting. There's, like I say, there's a lot of scientific stuff involved in here, and it also refers back to the USGS very much in this book, since they're the ones, of course, doing the research and trying to figure out when the next major quake is coming. So chapter 9 deals with a little bit different thing. It's entitled Run for Your Life. And they're referring to the tsunami wave that could be generated by a massive earthquake. And it depends on exactly where you are. If you're kind of west of Portland and along the coast somewhere in there, I would guesstimate that it's going to be a fairly large wave, anywhere from 50 to 100 feet, if not even bigger, depending on exactly how the quake occurs and how much drop in the subduction and the spring back, if you will, of the North American plate. So it really, really does raise some alarms. If you happen to be out on the coast and there's an earthquake and you see the water receding back out to the ocean, head for higher ground as quick as you can, because I guarantee you that wave is coming in, and it will come in with vengeance. It will have no mercy. Chapter 10, It's Our Job, and again referring back to the USGS and trying to predict the next quake. And it's very difficult to do these things. They just don't have the right tools yet and don't have the right sensors in place and things like this. It creates problems for them. Unfortunately, if they had all the money they needed to be able to do these things, they would definitely do them to help warn people and save lives in general. Next after that, chapter 11, Shake, Rattle, Portland, Vancouver, and Seattle. And again, they're referring to once the plate lets go and that unlock section, or the lock section unlocks, it's going to do some major damage all the way from up and top end of Vancouver Island all the way down to northern end of California, really, once it lets go. So it's not going to be just a little localized thing. It's going to be a massive one. And it's going to take a lot with it. Chapter 12 talks about some preventative measures that have been taken by some people trying to educate people in regards to fortifying their homes, and some interesting things that you can do to protect yourselves a little bit in the sense of earthquake proofing your home somewhat. Although it's not well received with everyone, and a lot of people don't look at it the right way. But if I was living out there, I certainly would be fortifying my home a little bit. Then we get into chapter 13, future science and coming quake. And of course, they're referring to the big one. It's quite interesting stuff in that chapter as well. And like I said before, with the lack of funds and things like that, it's hard for them to actually get through and predict the earthquakes. And of course, to wrap it up, chapter 14, the inevitable and scrutable. And like I said, this is a heck of a good book. It does have a whole bunch of decent scientific information in it, and I don't want to run on too much, but I give this book a thumbs up as well, as I did with the other ones. And a guy could spend a lot of time, I don't want to drag this on, but a guy could spend a lot of time on describing what's in here, and I just may make a video of the Pacific Northwest and that plate subduction, and just to further show. But the book definitely will give you a heck of a lot of insight. So if you do live in the Pacific Northwest and you are watching this, I would definitely recommend reading the book, and hopefully that'll help you stay a little bit safer. And it refers to all kinds of different aspects of it. If you're right on the coast, I would recommend that you have yourselves a plan to get out as soon as the quake happens. You can expect a tsunami coming in on the coastline, and 50 feet of tsunami wave can do a heck of a lot of damage and kill a bunch of people. And hopefully, you'll heed that little bit of a warning. Read the book, educate yourself. I found this book to be very informative, and like I said, it gets a thumbs up for me. And please read it, have a look, and it's worth the read. And I have to add a little thing here. I actually ordered this book back in August, and it's Cole's Indigo Books that I get most of my books from, and they boo-booed big time with the online ordering. So I have to say a big thank you to Tennessee from Cole's here in the Southgate Mall here in Edmonton. She actually got me the book for free, and I'm very happy and thankful for that. Even though they screwed up with the online ordering, the real human being made it come true and got me the book. So until next time, guys, it's a worthwhile read. Take care, stay safe, and educate yourself. Pick up a book or two and have some fun. Take care. Thanks for watching.